It began with a wedding that was never supposed to happen. The guests in the Grand Meravin Hotel ballroom clinked crystal glasses, smiled for photographs, and spoke of the couple as though their love was unshakable. Tall chandeliers spilled warm gold light over tables dressed in white and champagne silk, the scent of roses and peonies drifting through the air. The music was elegant, the laughter polite, but to Farron Allure, every note, every glance, every hand she shook was part of a performance. She was not there for love. She was there for a transaction, and for a memory she would one day use as a weapon. The groom, Merrick Phelan, was a man the city of Orovin adored in public and whispered about in private. He had inherited the Phelan empire young, expanding its reach from shipping into tech, media, and real estate. He had charm in abundance, but it was calculated charm, like a mask he could remove when the doors closed. Farron had once been drawn to him, years earlier, before she learned that Merrick's promises were barbed hooks, and his affection came with a ledger. She had thought she might be marrying a man. Instead, she had married a strategy. The Allure family name still carried weight in Orovin, but the fortune behind it had dwindled. Her father, Corin Allure, had gambled on volatile investments, each loss masked by borrowing against assets until the numbers no longer added up. Merrick had stepped in as the savior, merging business holdings, promising stability, and suggesting with that disarming smile that a marriage would unite the legacy of two great families. Farron had agreed, but not blindly. She had seen too much. From the moment the engagement was announced, she noticed the way Merrick's eyes followed her cousin Lyra across a room. Lyra, with her careless beauty and hunger for influence, played her part perfectly. The devoted bridesmaid, the charming dinner guest, the confidant. But Farron heard the whispered late-night calls, saw the messages deleted from Merrick's phone. She had chosen not to confront them. Not yet. Sometimes patience was sharper than rage. 3 months after the wedding, the night of reckoning began. Rain painted the streets of Orovin in shifting reflections. From the penthouse window, Farron watched the droplets race down the glass as Merrick adjusted his cufflinks and said he had a late board meeting. She sipped her wine, murmured that she would see him in the morning, and waited until the elevator doors closed before calling her driver. Drevin had been in her service long before Merrick came into her life. Without a word, he pulled up to the curb, and she slid into the back seat. They followed Merrick's black sedan through the winding streets to a private members-only club. It was the kind of place whose darkened glass promised anonymity, where deals were made between courses of rare wine. Farron sat in the shadow of the car's interior, watching him step out, straightening his tie. A figure emerged from the rain. Lyra. She greeted him with a kiss that was far too familiar for family. They disappeared inside, leaving the street empty but for the sound of tires hissing on wet asphalt. She should have felt rage, but what she felt instead was confirmation. The truth was a blade she had already sharpened in her mind. What she didn't expect was the man who approached her car moments later. Jareth Solvine, tall, with the kind of steady gaze that seemed to weigh a person and find their exact measure. He was Merrick's former business partner, pushed out of Valon Global in a dispute that had turned ugly. "You're watching the wrong thing," he said through the open window, rain streaking the shoulders of his coat. "You should be watching the paper trail." And so she did. Over the next few weeks, Jareth revealed what Merrick had been doing behind the scenes. While playing the devoted husband, Merrick had used Lyra as a proxy to quietly acquire the last of the Allure family's holdings. Factories, patents, even the old estate in the South. When the transfers were complete, Corin Allure would find himself with nothing but debts. The marriage had been a business maneuver. She had been the bridge he needed to cross. Farron's mind was cold, focused. She had grown up in a world of strategy and survival. If Merrick thought he had married a decorative pawn, he had misread the board entirely. She began with silence. Silence was disarming. She attended events with him, leaned into his arm for photographs, laughed at the appropriate moments. All the while, she built her own network. Her first ally was an investigative journalist named Selric Dane, whose career Merrick had once derailed with a legal threat. Selric still had contacts deep inside Orevin's media circles, and he owed Farron a favor from years back. Then came Vera Drone, a former Valon Global accountant with a memory for numbers and a resentment that had never cooled. Piece by piece, Farron assembled a shadow council, each with their own reasons to see Merrick fall. She didn't move recklessly. She understood that revenge without precision was just destruction, and destruction could make her collateral damage. So she planted whispers, small, plausible doubts about Lyra's loyalty, remarks about Jareth's growing influence, a suggestion that a major investor had been approached by a rival. Merrick began to watch her more closely, not with affection, but with suspicion. It was exactly where she wanted him, distracted, second-guessing his own instincts. The first public crack appeared when an anonymous tip reached the Oreven Times, revealing irregularities in Valon Global's offshore holdings. The story was carefully crafted, enough to cause panic among shareholders, but vague enough to avoid direct legal retaliation. Merrick responded with fury, tightening security, interrogating executives, demanding loyalty. He did not realize that 2 of those executives had already been quietly bought by Farron's allies. Meanwhile, she set a larger trap. She fed Merrick falsified reports about a tech startup called Curvath Systems, painted as an undervalued gem on the brink of a breakthrough. Every detail was believable. Market projections, signed letters of intent from major clients, even staged photographs of bustling offices. Merrick, eager for a public win to stabilize his image, pushed through an aggressive acquisition. 2 months later, the company collapsed under the weight of fabricated debts. Its clients revealed as ghost entities. The stock price nosedived. Investors fled. The board began to meet without him. Lyra tried to distance herself, but Farron had timed her next move perfectly. She released photographs, Merrick and Lyra entering the club on that rainy night, to select media outlets. The headlines were brutal. Public sympathy swung toward the wronged wife who had stood by her husband during business troubles, only to be betrayed personally. Merrick's humiliation was complete, his empire cracking at every seam. The final act was the shareholders' meeting. Merrick arrived prepared for a fight, unaware that through a web of proxies and discreet purchases, Farron now controlled a decisive block of votes. When the tally was read, and Merrick was removed as CEO, the room erupted in polite applause. He stood there, stunned, as congratulations flowed toward Farron for her steady leadership. That night, she returned to the penthouse alone. She poured a glass of wine, stood by the window, and watched the rain-washed streets below. Her phone buzzed. "It's done. He's finished," Jareth's message read. She smiled faintly. But the story did not end there. With Marek out, the Valon board offered Farron a leadership role, a symbolic position, they thought, to stabilize the company's public image. She accepted, knowing symbols could be made into weapons. From her new vantage point, she quietly began repairing the damage Marek had caused to the Aller holdings. She reacquired assets, liquidated debts, and rebuilt her family's fortune. Marek tried to fight back. He approached journalists, painted himself as the victim of an elaborate setup. But the documents, the photographs, the timing, all of it was too perfectly aligned against him. His words sounded like the ramblings of a man desperate to rewrite the past. Lyra vanished from public life entirely, her ambitions scorched in the fallout. A year later, Marek left Orovin altogether. Rumor placed him in small, unremarkable towns abroad, living under another name. Farron never confirmed it. She didn't need to. Her war was over, and she had won. She had learned something in the process. Revenge was not about rage, not about the heat of the moment. It was about patience, about letting your enemies build the stage for their own destruction, then stepping forward when the lights were brightest. And in the city of Orovin, where power was currency and loyalty was rare, patience was the sharpest blade of all.